Hello, my friends, hello, and welcome once again to Stately Vaughan Manor, where Roger and I have returned to talk about stuff. I actually don't have a title for this video, Roger. I don't know what I'm going to call it. I did have another video that I was going to put up this morning, which was a kind of TBR video featuring all the occult detectives I was going to read for Occult Detective October. But before I was even finished making the video, I realized I was never going to get to all these occult detectives. And even worse, before the month is out, I would just read a bunch of other stuff I didn't expect to read, because that's always how it works when I make any kind of TBR video. So I'm making this video instead, just talking about some random things that are on my mind. So, what random things are on my mind? Well, first of all, this is the final day, I believe. Is it still September? It's the final day of September, which means it's the final day of, I believe. I don't know. I think it's the final day of September, the final day of Samhain September, which has been a blast as usual. I had a lot more fun this Samhain September than last year. Last year, I made the dreadful mistake of reading pastiche Conan stories and novels. I went through the El Sprag de Camp series of Conan books, and that was a horrifying experience. I still hear people defend El Sprag de Camp and his series of Conan books. I have nothing against El Sprag de Camp's other work. I don't actually think El Sprag de Camp is a bad writer when he's writing, his other stuff. But yeah, he was crap on Conan. Let's face it. Let's face it, he was. And some of those stories were pretty rough for a diehard Robert E. Howard fan to get through. This year, however, was a lot more fun. I read Alborak, and a lot of other people read Alborak stories as well, so that was fun. Samhain September's cool because it's taken on a life of its own, as booktube reading events sometimes do. And so now people are doing it who don't have any idea who I am. They might know who Roger is, but they don't know who I am. Which is kind of cool in its own way. It's taking on, like I said, a life of its own. And it's nice to see that Robert E. Howard has become kind of popular again among, a small crowd of readers, perhaps. But certainly a few years ago, I didn't hear Robert E. Howard talked about as much as I do now. There seems to be a lot more interest at the moment. So that is cool. The last thing I read for Samhain September is this book. This is Marchers of Valhalla, which I wasn't expecting to pick up, but I did because I watched a video from Jim over at Mystery and Mayhem, where he talked about this Berkeley series of Robert E. Howard books. This is Marchers from Valhalla, which I got for $1. I got this for $1 at the bookshop in Hayward, California, which I'm not even sure is still there. I suspect it's probably not. It's been a long time since I've been to Hayward. But I got this at for $1. Good luck finding it for $1 now. If you do, congratulations. But it's an awesome book. Fantastic Ken Kelly cover. One of his best covers, I think. It's wonderful. And it's full of stories that you might not be familiar with because they haven't been republished all that often. Only one of the stories in this book was published during Howard's lifetime. So it's an interesting book. I will talk more about it probably whenever I get to my weekly reading report, whenever that is. Probably this week will be Saturday or Sunday, more like Sunday probably. But yeah, Samhain September, another successful Samhain September. That was awesome. And I think going forward, Samhain September will probably be a lot like it was this year, where you could pretty much read whatever you want, although I will focus on probably a particular character. Next year, I don't know who that will be. Probably, I'm thinking Bran McMorn, but I don't know for sure. We'll see. That's a long ways off. So yeah, there was that, and then now we are going into Occult Detective October, which I'm actually pretty excited about because I like occult detectives, and there's a bunch of stuff along those lines that I want to read. I have to finish the book I'm reading now, which is this one, which has nothing to do with occult detectives. This is After Doomsday by Poul Anderson. Anderson, has written all kinds of great stuff. And this is an old science fiction novel that, I've had lying around for a long time. I have millions of science fiction novels lying around that I haven't read. And I looked at this one, and it has such a cool cover. Look at that. And it's about after the Earth has been destroyed, and a spaceship with, people on it come back to where the Earth used to be, and it's still there. It's just been shattered and destroyed, and all life has been wiped out. And it's kind of like a mystery where they have to find out who destroyed the Earth. And there's like a ton of aliens. It's sort of Star Trek in that way, sort of, in that there's a bunch of different aliens throughout the galaxy. And, there are different suspects. And so they have to find out who destroyed the Earth. I'm at the point where they did find out who destroyed the Earth. And now I just have to find out what happens after that. It is not Anderson's best book, but it's pretty interesting. And again, it's one of those books I didn't intend to read this month. I just picked it up because it looked cool. And indeed, it is. I'll talk more about this on my reading report as well. But occult detectives, I have to decide which occult detectives to read and how much of it I will have time for. John Silence is a lock because that's part of Roger's Cheap Old Book Club. Algernon Blackwood's John Silence is awesome. He's a really interesting character. This is from early days in occult detecting. 1908 is when this book came out. And, sometimes Silence takes an active part in the investigation and actually kind of solves the case as a detective would. And other times he just hangs out and listens to somebody tell him a story. It's that kind of thing. Very successful book, I believe. Algernon Blackwood's John Silence, Physician Extraordinary. This edition from Dover is edited by S.T. Joshi, and it has an extra story in it that the original edition did not have, which is A Victim of Higher Space. The original edition, John Silence, Physician Extraordinary, is available from Project Gutenberg, so you can get it for free, and free is pretty good. So yeah, I probably will, I definitely will read that. But there's some other stuff. Now this is, you might not know, but this is important going into this October for Occult Detective October, because it is the 100-year anniversary of the first appearance of Jules de Grandin from Seabury Quinn. Seabury Quinn's Jules de Grandin first appeared in a story called The Horror on the Links, which appeared in Weird Tales October 1925. That was the very first Jules de Grandin story, so it has been 100 years of Jules de Grandin, pretty much almost exactly. Which is cause for celebration. But nobody's celebrating because very few people read Jules de Grandin anymore. But, it is Occult Detective October. So, you should celebrate the 100 years of Jules de Grandin, the French occult detective who had a hard time speaking French correctly. He's a lot of fun, though. These stories are tremendous fun. And because of that, Seabury Quinn was one of the most popular writers in Weird Tales. And yeah, read some Jules de Grandin just for fun in honor of his 100 years of occult detecting. So yeah, I probably will reread this book, The Horror on the Lakes by Seabury Quinn, from the complete tales of Jules de Grandin. I've been meaning to get back to these and rereading the whole series. So yeah, maybe I'll start this month, but you never know, because there are other stuff. I dug up this book. This is Semi-Duel. Semi-Duel, another occult detective from the olden days. He appeared in 1912 in Cavalier magazine. His real identity, his real name is Prince Abdul Omar, and he goes by the nickname, I guess, of Semi-Duel. He uses his occult powers to help him solve crimes. And I've never read these. This book came out when? I think it was 2000. Well, let me see, so I'm not wrong. This book came out in 2013. 2013. And it's the first book in the complete Kabbalistic cases of Semi-Duel, The Occult Detector, Volume 1, 1912. And this has his first 3 adventures in it. I believe, I'm not certain, but I believe there are 4 volumes in this series published so far. I only have the one. I intended to read it, never did. Put it away, forgot about it, and never got the others. So I'm highly tempted to read this because, I've had it long enough. Probably should read it. And he sounds like an interesting occult detective. Apparently a pretty popular series. I think this ran for about 20 years. Duel was featured in Cavalier, All Story Weekly, The People's Magazine, Top Notch, he was in that, and in Argosy. So he was in a lot of different magazines. Written by J.U. Geisy and Junius B. Smith. Neither of those names sound real, but I think they were. So yeah, I might get to Semi-Duel. Why not? And then there's also this book, which I certainly will read because it's so short, and I'm on the 500 book challenge. This is The Angry Dead by Rosemary Pardo. This has Jane Bradshaw, church restorer Jane Bradshaw, who runs into supernatural shenanigans. Short ones, apparently. And these stories were originally published in the 1980s. There was a collection that was published either in the year 2000 or 2001. I'm not certain. And then this was republished by Cathaven Press a few years ago. They are the publishers of Occult Detective Magazine, a magazine you should read, especially in October, for Occult Detective October. I think they're at the 11th issue now. I think that's out now, actually. You should go get that. And The Angry Dead is still available as well. So, yeah, I will read some, if not all of that. We'll see. But there's also a bunch of other things I want to get to. The very next thing I'm going to read, probably, is this issue of Weird Tales, which Grammaticus sent me. I read a couple issues of Weird Tales this month in September, and they were a lot of fun. And I read those in preparation for this one. This is the December issue from 1933. I don't know. It doesn't say here. But yeah. Now I'm curious. When was this? I can't remember. I'm going to open it up out of its package. So let's see. Yeah, December 1933. And I had to read the other 2 issues of Weird Tales because they had the first 2 parts of The Vampire Master by Edmund Hamilton in it. So I had to read the first 2 parts of The Vampire Master, and then I realized how much fun it is to read Weird Tales. I have all of the issues of Weird Tales electronically. I've never gotten around to reading them, probably because they're electronic copies. And ebooks, I just forget about. Whereas physical books are all around me, staring me in the face. So I remember those. But I had a great time reading those 2 issues. And so I'm going to read this one. I don't think this is the end of The Vampire Master, though. I think it might have gone to part 4. We'll see. And if it does, I'm going to read the issue following. And then I will continue to read Weird Tales because it's so much fun. I probably will go back in time And I'm thinking, how far back should I go? I'm not going to go back. I already read the first issue of Weird Tales, but I'm probably not going to go back that far. I probably will go back to, I was thinking I'll go back to 1925 and read the issue of Weird Tales where Jules de Grandin first appeared, because I think that would be appropriate for his 100-year anniversary. And there's still a bunch of other stuff I need to read. I've got The Red Hawk from Edgar Rice Burroughs, the next Edgar Rice Burroughs book I have to read. I've got The Shadow, Double Z, who's been hanging out. Got to read this. And this one I dug out because of a conversation I took part in the other day. This is The Werewolf of Ponkert by H. Warner Munn. This is from the Time Lost series from Centaur Books, which I believe was a small press. You'll see their books once in a while. They did a bunch of Solomon Kane books as well, I believe. But recently, I took part in a conversation that was recorded for the Robert E. Howard Foundation's channel about Robert E. Howard's horror stories. And on that video, which I don't think has been released yet, there are a bunch of scholars and experts and me. And this story came up, The Werewolf of Ponkert, and because of its influence on Robert E. Howard and on some of his stories. And I've read this book, but I read it years and years and years ago. And so I was struggling to remember what was in this and how this might have influenced the story Wolf's Head, because it's just been too long since I've read it. But, you know, the experts in that conversation knew all about it. And I'm like, which is often how it is. So I dug this out, and I'm going to reread it just to remind myself about the story and, you know, what the story is about. I've recently read some other H. Warner Munn that I've really enjoyed, so I'm actually looking forward to that. And there's actually a couple other writers that I'm thinking of revisiting in the near future. One is Clive Barker. So you'll probably be seeing some Clive Barker in the near future for me, just because it's been years and years since I've read Barker. I thought about it, and I realized that I haven't read Clive Barker since before I started this channel. And I've never read all of his books, but the books I have read, I've enjoyed. I've always liked Clive Barker. I've always kind of admired his imagination. And he's a guy that's literally gone through hell. You know, he's had major health issues that have nearly killed him. And he has survived, held on, and kept his enthusiasm for his work. And he's done all kinds of things. He's done films, he paints, he does all kinds of stuff, Clive Barker. And there are just a lot of his books that I've never gotten to. So I'll probably be revisiting Barker. And another writer I've been thinking a lot about is a writer by the name of Charles L. Grant, who used to write quiet horror. That was the term they used for Grant's work. He wrote a lot. He wrote during the 80s mostly and into the 90s horror fiction. He wrote a bunch of paperbacks from hell, but they were so tame they could probably be called paperbacks from heck. You know, he was a very tame writer of horror, and he did write quiet horror. So quiet, sometimes you didn't even know the horror was there. And this is not a knock against him. He just had his own style. And I remember reading his stuff, and I don't know actually what reminded me of him. Actually, yes, I do. Bartel at Bartels Books talked about him recently. But I remember thinking some of his stuff was good and some of his stuff was just... And I wonder if that was because but he gets a lot of respect, Grant. You know, he's one of those writers who's respected by a lot of other horror writers, for example. And so I'm going to give him another try because I've got a ton of his stuff, again, as ebooks. A while ago, all his books became available as ebooks. I don't know if all of them, but a lot of them. And they're pretty cheap, I think. I think they're still available, and I think they're pretty cheap. So I have a lot of them. And so I'm thinking of revisiting Grant and just seeing what I think of him now. Is his quiet horror too quiet? We will see. And I've rambled. I've rambled on for 20 minutes. And I don't even know what to call this video, Roger. I don't know. It's the replacement video for that other video I did. Anyway, catch me tomorrow for the official beginning of Occult December. Occult Detective October. The official beginning for Occult Detective October. I need coffee. With Epic Comic Book Wednesday, where we'll talk about one of the greatest occult detectives ever. Okay, I will see you then. I will catch you next time.